Hey guys, um, so I've got another top 10. What? What? Why are you looking at me like that? Something that no, I look fine, don't I? I combed my hair this morning. Is that what's different? Anyway, nothing for it. So today I've got another top 10 for you. This is my top 10 favorite lizards. So I'm talking about all lizards here. Your primitive lizards, your iguanas, chameleons, blah, blah, blah. These are my top 10 favorites out of that entire group, all of the squamates, all the legged squamates, rather. Um, just like with my oddball freshwater fish video, these animals are not necessarily beginner animals. These are just my favorite animals. In fact, most of the animals on this list I would put in either the intermediate or advanced keeper categories. Because they are not, most of them either get too big or are potentially dangerous animals. Just like my previous video, most of these guys are big boys. They need big custom tanks. Some of them are actually acceptable for beginners, or even like late intermediates. I may later do some beginner top tens, like top 10 best community fish, top 10 best cichlids, top 10 best beginner lizards. I may do some videos like that if I have time later. But this is just my top 10 favorites. Same rules apply as previously. I will try to explain why these animals aren't necessarily good for beginners as I talk about them, but keep that in mind if I forget or I don't mention it. Please keep that in mind. All right, so number one is the leopard gecko. Leopard geckos are one of the ones that are a beginner animal. In fact, this is probably the lizard that I recommend to most people who want to get into reptiles. They don't get big. You're talking about an 8-inch animal, full grown. They don't need any special lighting, really just heat. And they're bug eaters, so just crickets, mealworms, waxworms. If you're trying to put weight on a female for breeding, you could feed it a pinky if you wanted. But that's more of like a sometimes food. That's not something I would make part of their regular diet. They come in a lot of cool color variations. Your normals, I think normals are beautiful, yellow with black spots all over and a white tail. But then there's other color morphs and stuff. And at this point, there's some very valuable color variations and color morphs. I believe this morning when I looked at king snake, the highest priced one I saw on the first page, there were multiple pages for leopard geckos. On the first page, I believe, was $1,200. You get into some cool stuff with patterns in the eyes and stuff like that. Some pretty neat stuff out there. I remember when I first started breeding these guys, the craziest thing that was available was the Blizzard, which is now a pretty run-of-the-mill color morph. In fact, I don't think they cost more than $50 anymore. And your normal leopard geckos and albinos and stuff like that, the stuff that's more easily available, those animals generally only cost about 20 to 30 bucks. So they're really cool. They don't need big enclosures. A 20-gallon tank is really enough for one or two. I'll do a video on basic husbandry later, but the abridged version, don't put multiple animals together unless you're intending to breed them. There's not really a reason for it. Reptiles in general don't get lonely. They're not extremely social animals. A few exceptions, but most of the time in captivity they do just fine by themselves. Number two are the Leachianus or Rhacodactylus leachianus geckos, also known as the New Caledonian giant geckos. This is the heaviest gecko species in the world, full grown, potentially more than a pound. So an impressive animal to be sure. They're really, really cool. 20 inches full grown for a big male. Grande Terre, I believe, is the largest locality of that species. And like I said, more than a pound. Generally just kind of solid gray with some darker gray modeling through the back. There's also green and browns and stuff like that. They make a lot of really cool noises. Chirps, whistles, barks, growls. Really, really neat. And they do that more when there's a pair of them, but they will also do it when there's singles. They're actually really, really cool. They got short, stubby tails. It's actually normal for them to have those short, stubby tails. The whole Rhacodactylus genus also has the same kind, the same specialized scales that they have on their fingertips, they have that on the tip of their tail as well. Just a neat little sub fact about them. This is one that you could consider a beginner animal too, but with their size and their cost, I would say that they're more appropriate for someone intermediate, just because most beginners aren't going to want to put out, $300, $400 just for the animal, much less, $400, $500 for a cage, an appropriately sized cage for an animal that large. Needs to be vertically oriented because they are arboreal, and they need lots of space because they're big and they're kind of bulky. So, and the stuff they climb on also needs to be very thick and heavy because they're big and they're not exceptionally graceful either. All right, number 3, panther chameleons. Panther chameleons are probably, I'd say almost inarguably, my favorite chameleon species. They come in a lot of different color variants. Those color variants are usually based on localities where they're found, like amblyopes, blue bars, all that stuff. Those are usually locality-based color variants. They come in a lot of really cool colors. Bright reds, green and red bands, blues, blue bands over green body. Lots and lots of really, really cool colors. And being chameleons, their color does change from time to time with attitude and, emotional standing and stuff like that. These guys are not beginner animals. Chameleons in general are not beginner animals. You need a vertically oriented cage. They do the best in screen cages. You could do a glass cage, but you need to make sure you're getting proper ventilation or else your chameleon will get a respiratory infection. You really need to pay attention to that. A lot of people lose their chameleons because they try and put them in glass tanks. It just doesn't really work out unless it is set up specifically to allow proper ventilation. They also need high humidity. They're bug eaters by nature. They won't eat prepared foods. In my experience, I've never seen one eat prepared foods. But again, a larger chameleon, not huge, not as big as, say, a veiled chameleon or another species like that, but still quite large. So another big tank, and it's going to have to be, in most cases, a screen tank. So think about that. All right, number 4 is the Gila monster, and really this is all helidermids. So your Gila monsters and then your beaded lizards. I really, really, really like helidermids. Gila monsters, I really like their pattern as opposed to the beaded lizards. Beadeds are really, really big and almost solid black. A few light colored scales throughout. Generally pretty sparse on adult animals. The Gila monsters have like orange and black reticulated pattern across the entire body. They're a little bit smaller too, although they're still both pretty large animals. 18 to 24 inches for a Gila monster and 36 to 40 inches for a beaded lizard. So still big animals. These animals are advanced keeper only, and in fact, I would recommend someone with some venomous handling experience, or if you are interested, get some venomous handling experience before you buy one, because these animals are venomous. They are truly venomous. They have venom glands along the bottom jaw. So that's not something to be taken lightly by anyone who's interested in them. A bite, in all likelihood, won't kill you, especially if you seek medical attention right away, which I strongly recommend. But it's still a medically significant event, and you better bet that it's going to hurt a lot for multiple days. Even with treatment, you're probably going to be in a lot of pain for several days. Number 5 is the red tegu, and that's Riggs in the background having a party back there. Number 5 is the red tegu. So tegus in general are really, really cool animals. Argentine black and whites are probably a little bit, more popular than the reds because they are a little bit larger and maybe a little bit smarter. That's kind of hard to gauge for sure. But I really like the black and whites, don't get me wrong. I think they're really, really pretty. I like that black coloration with the stark white oscillations on the back and on the sides and all that stuff. Beautiful animals. But the red tegus, I like that nice beet red that they have, that bright red. Beautiful, beautiful animals. Like I said, they don't get quite as big. You're still talking about a 4-ish foot animal, 4.5 foot animal. Hey Riggs, what's up, buddy? That's Riggs. Hi Riggs. Um, so still a good-sized animal. Not quite as big as, black and whites, but still good-sized. All right, number 6, blue-tongued skinks. Blue-tongued skinks are cool. This is another one that you could consider a beginner animal. I'd put them more towards intermediate level keeper, someone who's had maybe a bearded dragon or something before that. Um, they get some size to them, not as about as big as a bearded dragon. Twice the girth though. They get quite heavy. An 18-inch animal is basically full grown, 24 maybe. Um, they're really, really cool. A lot of color variations, mostly locality-based color variations. So the various islands throughout the north coast of Australia and then up into Papua New Guinea and the other islands in that area, you see quite a bit of color variation in the blue tongues that you find, um, based on which islands they have evolved on. And one of my favorites is the Halmaheras. They're really, really cool. They got a lot of black on them, which shock. I like a lot of black. So beautiful animals, and bright blue tongues. They're omnivorous. They eat animal and plant materials. Um, anyway, they eat almost anything you throw at them, which makes them a delight to keep. They're pretty hardy and they're pretty happy to eat. Whatever's put in front of them. Stuff like canned dog food and stuff like that is readily accepted. As part of a varied diet, that's fine. I wouldn't predominantly feed just canned dog food because it's made for a different animal. But as part of a varied diet, that is acceptable. All right, number 7, Kimberly rock monitors. Now we're getting into the monitors. There's 4 monitors on this list. It's almost half the list because I love monitors. But Kimberly rocks are a smaller species. You're talking about a 30-inch animal, full grown. So not huge for monitors, at least. Well, for lizards in general, but monitors especially. Not all that big. Mostly tail. They're insectivorous. You can feed them prepared foods and stuff like that, and in most cases in captivity they will accept them. But bugs should make up most of the diet. They're beautiful animals. Like I said, full-grown 30 inches. They've got all different, nice kind of cream-colored spots on the back, kind of a tricolored body pattern. Beautiful, beautiful animals. Pretty small, though, like I said. Let's see. Number 8, black roughnecks. Black roughnecks are one of my favorite animals, all in all, like favorites, favorites. Full grown, about 46, maybe, or 48, maybe 50 inches. A lot of tail. They are arboreal, so like I was saying before, they're tree climbing animals, so you need a vertically oriented cage, but since it's such a big animal, you also need it to be, quite wide and, fairly long as well. Ideally, at least twice as long as the animal. As big as you can do, they will accept that. They will appreciate that. And since they are so large, you need some pretty large ornaments for them to climb on and stuff like that. Otherwise, they will not be happy because they'll be breaking the stuff off the walls and just breaking it in half by laying on it. Black roughnecks, full grown, are shockingly solid black. The babies are black with like bright yellow spots all over their bodies. They've got these long, slender snouts. I really like it. It looks like your stereotypical dinosaur, which is not what dinosaurs look like. But anyway, you guys don't want to hear about that. Those long, beautiful, slender snouts, solid black, and they're pretty placid as full-grown adults. They're not very aggressive. They're not grumpy. You may get a hiss out of them every now and then, but most of the time they're just kind of like, meh, whatever, especially when they get used to you. Number 9 is the Mertens water monitor. These guys are not all that common in the hobby. In fact, I've only seen them a handful of times on anyone's lists. They get 6-ish feet, maybe a little bit more, maybe potentially 7 feet. Long, slender animals, beautiful coloration on the face, kind of peach and blue stripes on the face, and very, very slender, elongate looking. They look longer than they are because they are so slender and lean looking. And these guys are primarily aquatic, actually. They spend most of their time in the water. Um, Very neat animals, very neat. They need to have at least an amphibious enclosure, so like 50-50 water land, maybe 40-60 water land. But enough water that they can fully submerge is important. And as aquatic animals, probably leaning a little bit more towards seafood would be appropriate for them as far as food goes. Um, Briggs is getting starved for attention. It's been like a whole 10 minutes since he's seen me. Um, so yeah, keep that in mind. That's not going to be an easy animal to care for, and you're going to be doing a lot of water changes and a lot of scrubbing of wet surfaces, because these guys will splash and they'll get everything wet. So keep that in mind. All right, final animal. My number 10 animal for this list is the crocodile monitor. I love crocodile monitors. They're so cool. I really like their coloration. Solid black with sulfur yellow stripes and spots all over the body. Even on adults, they still keep that coloration. Beautiful, beautiful animals. And actually, the longest squamate in existence right now or not longest squamate, excuse me, longest lizard in existence right now at about 14 feet. They may get longer than that, or they may be as short as 12 feet. But even at 12 feet, they're still the longest animals, or the longest lizards. They have this really like don't give a shit attitude. Pretty brutish, and they can mess you up, even with just their tail if they tail whip you, because the tail is very long. An animal with a 4-foot long body will have an 8 to 9 foot long tail. So that's a big animal, and that's a lot of tail. So a tail whip from one of them would probably make you bleed. So these guys are definitely an advanced animal. In fact, I would say it may, it may even be safer to have a Gila monster over one of these guys, because they may not even mean to hurt you, and they may cut you open so deep that you need stitches, like just with their claws, just trying to like climb over your shoulder or something like that. Most of the guys who keep these or handle them on a regular basis use like welding gloves that go all the way down to the forearm, and with good reason. They can mess you up, and they aren't even meaning to, but they've got big, strong claws for climbing trees. Again, this is an arboreal animal, a 14-foot long arboreal animal. So let's think about enclosures. An enclosure for an animal that size would have to be the size of a small room. I'd say even like your average small room is probably a little small for one of these guys full grown. So think about that. Unless you have a room big enough to fit a room-sized cage inside of it. Does that make sense? Anyway, yeah, so you're talking about an enormous enclosure, full-grown. Something ideally like 8-9 feet tall, 15 minimal feet wide, and 15 minimal feet long. Like, it's a big cage. So, again, that's something to think about with these guys. Very, very big animals, and not, in fact, most of them are not friendly. If you get a young one and you work with it, there is that potential to have it at least be tolerant of interaction and handling. But a lot of the croc monitors I've seen are not like that. They don't want to be touched. They don't want anything to do with people unless those people are bringing food. So that's a potentially dangerous animal, but very beautiful. And I like that kind of attitude in my animals. It's just when they're that big, it's something that you have to be extremely wary of. So that's my top 10. Like I said, most of these guys are not good beginner animals. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks, guys.